Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Welcome to the GSMC Football Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. I am half of the host here, Ethan, and the other half is sitting right next to me, Mr. Brice. Brice, how are you doing today on this fine Monday?
Man, I'm doing all right, man. Just doing my other job and also just making it through every day, just trying to be better than I was yesterday, and just pretty much living life, I guess you could say, during this weird time in our lives. Obviously, we're going to continue to go this a little bit longer, so all I can do is to continue to live life and embrace it as much as I can. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. I lost a lot of money last night because Jokic couldn't score 2 points. Shout out to Jamal Murray. I took the under for his first half. Didn't make it. Shout out to Donovan Mitchell. He barely made it underneath the under, but he still torched me in the second half. It's okay sometimes betting on fantasy.
Wait, are you gonna bet tonight since they play again tonight?
They do not play again tonight.
Yeah, they played again. They played on Saturday. Today's Monday.
Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, they played. They
played last night.
They played Saturday.
No,
wait, am I wrong?
Yes.
No, I'm not wrong. There's no way.
I literally just watched them play last night.
Hold up. No, that was not last night, actually.
Yes, it was.
Was it?
Yes, today is Monday. Think about this.
I mean, hold up. Let
How are you going to tell me about the pain that I have felt?
Let me confirm. Okay, you're right. I don't know why I thought it was today.
Listen, the pain holds no bounds to what I experienced last night.
Okay, so tomorrow when they play, you go put some bets on it?
No, I'm staying away, actually. It hurts too much. I had a 6 for 6. If I went and hit all 6, I had a good amount of money coming in. And I went 5 for 6 because Jokic couldn't get an assist and a point. So it was just a lot of emotional distress this morning and also last night. A lot of words were said in multiple group chats as, people make bets in groups so that we all win. And nobody won last night. So it was pain. But we continue on forward and we make the best of what we do here at the GSMC. And one of the things that we do best here is talking about football and all things NFL in college. And we have a good amount of conversational pieces to talk about. And the first thing first is, do you see the smoke, Brice? Do you see the smoke signal coming from the south of us? Because we're talking about Florida, the state. Not Florida State, but we're talking about the state of Florida. Jacksonville, Florida. Brice, Jacksonville is on fire. What's happening in Jacksonville, Brice?
I mean, yeah, it looks like that, doesn't it? I think it's pretty obvious what they're doing. They're rebuilding. They're going complete restart. And they're just accumulating a lot of picks. And they say right now, currently, they're tanking for Lawrence. They're taking for Lawrence right now. And
that's foolishness, though.
I mean,
it's foolishness. How are you going to tank for Trevor Lawrence when you have Gardner Minshew right now? It wasn't like Gardner Minshew was bad. He was
and what happened, he did well. Like, he wasn't like, he didn't blow it, but like, it's Jacksonville. We weren't expecting anybody to blow it on fire.
All I know is right now there's not a lot of places that are in instantaneous need of quarterback play besides the Bears. Right? And there are a couple quarterbacks coming out in this draft this year that, people are definitely looking at, like the dude from North Dakota State, the same place that Carson Wentz came from. Some people are saying he's a prodigy. And then, of course, we know Trevor Lawrence. We know about Justin Fields. We know these guys are coming out. However, in the National Football League, unless something drastically changes, at least the optics here are not looking like people need quarterbacks right now as much as we think. Maybe the Patriots, if Cam doesn't work out, maybe they go and find one. Maybe the Steelers. We know for a fact the Bears situation is not looking good because Nick Foles has not looked good in training camp, and we know Blake Bortles is worse right now via training camp.
Oh, you mean Mitchell?
Oh, I said Blake Bortles?
Yeah.
My fault.
Yeah, I think about Jacksonville a lot, huh? The legend of Blake Bortles.
You know, it's crazy. I want to talk about that. Jacksonville wasn't too long ago pushing for the AFC Championship.
With Blake Bortles at quarterback. Yeah,
right.
They almost made it to the Super Bowl.
I am not saying here that Blake Bortles, that they were wrong for moving on from Blake Bortles. What I will say is they went from a time where they let go, like they went to Blake Bortles AFC Championship game. No, they weren't in AFC.
Yeah,
AFC Championship game. They lost
New
to they lost to the Patriots, and then they ran it back. And Blake Bortles was horrible. We understand this. Then they moved on and they traded for Nick Foles. Now, things didn't go as well as they thought they did, but I thought, you know, holistically, they had a team composition that was still going to be good. Their defense still should have been very good. But the unfortunate reality of the situation is their quarterback was so bad and their quarterback situation was bad for so long that all these defensive players started wanting to get paid right then and there. And to be fair, they could have, because nobody outside of when they did pay Nick Foles via the trade, nobody at the quarterback position was about to make buku amounts of money. So that's the thing about trying to win a championship. If you pay everybody else in order to bring in better skill position guys around your rookie quarterback, you have a good percentage chance of winning if you hit on a quarterback that's very good in the next 4 years. Like, you know, Patrick Mahomes or like Lamar Jackson, right? Or Deshaun Watson to an extent. We all see where the formula is because thankfully Seattle showed us from a long time ago, you know. Unfortunately for Carson Wentz, he didn't get to do it himself, but we saw when you have a guy on a rookie deal, what's capable of what's the possibilities are when you have a good team around a young guy that's not making as much money. And Jacksonville, unfortunately, just didn't strike oil on that. And now it's time to blow it up, I suppose. But at the same time, this blow up feels a bit unnatural. It feels like it's kind of premature to me.
Well, I think one thing that also struck a lot of people is the fact that obviously this was a bad season they just had, and the fact they kept head coach Doug Marrone, and you're just kind of like, why would you keep him? You have no reason to keep him, and then you're going to run it back and blow the entire team up. So he's destined to have another bad season this year. So you have to fire him. Like, I mean, there's no justification to keep him. And then yet at the same time, you're trading Jalen Ramsey. You traded AJ Bouye. You I think they traded someone else. Wasn't Calais Campbell on that team this past year? They traded him. They're letting go all their best players. They're not giving anybody no money. And it's just like, so I guess they feel like we're about to have a really bad year. So let's just keep the coach, let him take the fall, and then we'll fire him. And then we'll refresh. Even though we're starting over technically now, we're going to truly, officially, to the public, reset next year. Because then they're going to fire Marrone, bring a new head coach in. Listen, as much as this sucks to say it, Gardner Minshew's set up for failure this year because he doesn't have much of a team around him. So we can't. If he's able to win games and play great with this roster, then they definitely would have to rethink their quarterback decision. But if you ask a lot of people, Gardner Minshew now or Trevor Lawrence, a lot of people are going to take Trevor Lawrence. And I think Jacksonville's just like, listen, we need that next hot spot, our next franchise guy. And they maybe looked at what Miami did. They tanked. They got Tua. We'll see how that worked out. And maybe they're just like, listen, we're accumulating a lot of picks. We can start over, have a younger roster. If we have, like I said, new GM, new head, whatever they decide to do next year, get a new, scouting department in there, and we find some good players, and we can build this team up again the right way. Because at first you thought Jacksonville during this first restart was good because when they, like with Blake Bortles, was because like think about it, they found the running game because you got Leonard Fournette, you could run the ball, you had great defense, and all Blake Bortles had to do is not mess it up. And then it all crumbled. And now they're restarting this again. But now they're looking for a guy who now we don't have to worry about if we don't have a Leonard Fournette. We have a guy who can go out there and ball, And And I think that's one of the most important things. And, speaking of Leonard Fournette, it's just, do you see a very big market for him? I mean, he's still in his 20s. He can still run the rock. Honestly, he had a pretty decent year last year, except the end of the season when I think he got hurt, maybe. I think he got hurt at the end of the season and stuff. So, I think he's somebody who can still really help out a team in a 2-back system. Is there any team in particular maybe that should look into getting him and acquiring him and make him part of the running attack?
Well, I guess here's the thing about Leonard Fournette. The advanced statistics, right? They don't bode well for him per se, but at the same time, Leonard Fournette was a guy on a team like Jacksonville who was not very good last year. And I also think that he was uncomfortable being on that team for a long time. Almost since his rookie year, he hasn't really liked being there. He only had 3 touchdowns last season. Not great. He had 1,100 something yards rushing, so he still hit 1,000 yards. He's still serviceable, right? But as far as his overall usage rate on the team, he was too high of a usage rate, and yet his effective yardage was just not the greatest. He had a down year, but let's keep in mind, Jacksonville wasn't a barn burner. They weren't an offense held back because of Leonard Fournette. It's the same argument I make for Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell had a really bad year, according to just traditional stats and to metrics. But at the same time, we have to remember what the situation is there. Le'Veon Bell is playing with a Jets team that is not good. The Jets offensive line was not good last year. There was no other offensive weapon that you can name off the top of your head that could be anywhere equal to who Le'Veon Bell is as a player, even if he wasn't 100%. Right? Like, I'm not speaking out of turn here when I say Robbie Anderson is not half the player that a 85%, Le'Veon Bell is. It's just not the case. So Leonard Fournette is on a team that, we saw the rise of DJ Shark. We get that. Who else is there? Nobody else is there. And unfortunately, even though a lot of people were hype on the Gardner Minshew hype train for a little while, and, he wasn't as bad as people thought he might have been, or he was a nice surprise over there in Jacksonville.
He was a 6th-round pick. You don't really have a lot of expectations.
Right. That's the thing. Maybe we're just overblown. Like, maybe he's just average, and that's cool for him because that just means he'll stay in the league. Like, he'll stay in the league, right? He'll make his money because he's average. But I don't think Gardner Minshew is sitting here, we're sitting here thinking that, oh man, everybody missed on him. Like, I don't think anybody is stressed out because they've missed out on Gardner Minshew. Mm-hmm. So, coupled with that, the whole defense has basically been stripped down to parts legitimately. Like, this is the biggest example of we're stripping down our team for parts that I've ever seen. And Leonard, they just couldn't find a trade for him, so they just cut him. Now, where do I think Leonard might fall? There's not that many teams that need a running back of that caliber. And what I mean at that caliber, I mean is that paycheck. Because wherever he gets signed to, he's definitely going to be looking for an opportunity to make more money in the next offseason because he is in that 2017 draft class of death that literally added probably 8, that might be too much. 7, I'd say 7 of the best running backs in the league came from the 2017 draft class. So, in all honesty, they're all looking to get paid. Like, we're going to talk about Kamara in a second, but Kamara's looking to get paid. Dalvin Cook is looking to get paid.
Was McCaffrey in that draft?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
McCaffrey just got paid. So all these guys are Kareem Hunt. He's going to be looking to get paid somewhere. But there's only so many slots for running backs, and there's only so many bell cow slot running backs that are able to get paid the money that Christian McCaffrey got. And that's the problem. There's not a lot of places for these running backs to make a name for themselves anymore because everybody does running back by committee. No one's going to sit here and pay you, 5 years, $60 million to run the ball. Like, no one's going to do that anymore. And it's going to get tough, right? It's going to get tough. So I think knee-jerk reaction, I think that the only team off the top of my head that I think is in a real need for running back is Washington. And even they might just roll the dice with Adrian Peterson one more year. That's just how much the value of running back, like overpaying for one, is like a sacrilegious thing to do now. Like no one's going to take on a running back that's going to want a contract year or that's going to want a big time contract. And we'll see. I think honestly he might just hold out for a little bit and wait till things, fall into place and then just come in the middle of the season where somebody needs more running back support.
Yeah, because like I said, it's actually very interesting. They cut him this late because like at this point you got to think about. I believe they say even as a free agent you have to go like 3 days of negative tests before you can actually visit the facility if you're going to get a visit. So there's going to be some time in between him and maybe signing with a team, and he has to learn that playbook. Obviously, running is not as complex, but he still has to learn whatever type of zone blocking scheme, if it's like a straight blocking scheme, whatever. And, he'll just have to work with whoever he can get, to, I guess, reach out to him and say, hey, we like to bring you in and be a part of our running back committee. It kind of reminds me of Latavius Murray when he was in Minnesota, and he was kind of like the main guy kind of for like a year. I think Dalvin Cook was hurt that his first year. I believe I don't know if it was the year before the first year of Dalvin, and then he was kind of like the starting guy and he played pretty well. And then obviously y'all picked him up and now he's part of y'all's duo at running back. Kind of reminds me of that. Like he might need to be in one of those situations. I think he could be a good, back in like out of two. Cause I think, if you maybe have a quicker back, maybe you could bring in Fournette to be more of a power back and, that'd be a pretty good combo right there.
No, for sure. We're going to take our first break and we'll come back talking more football here at the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. We will be right back.
Listen up, sports bettors. This is Brice and Ethan here to tell you about our favorite sports book, and that's BetUS. Football, basketball, and baseball are all back, and that means it's time to get down your bets. We only endorse one sports book, and that is BetUS.com. Why, you ask? BetUS is the pioneer in online betting with more than 25 years in the biz. You need a sports book with integrity and longevity, and you need to know that you're going to get paid.
That's right, Brice. You need a sports book that offers everything, including live betting, MMA, golf, horses, esports, entertainment, and all kinds of crazy prop bets and futures. So call today at 1-800-MyBetUS. That's 1-800-MyBetUS, and they will walk you through getting started. Nobody in the industry gives better bonuses or bigger bonuses than BetUS. Join now, mention GSMC, and you get up to 150% in bonuses on your first deposit. Nobody beats that. We bet at BetUS, and so should you. So join BetUS today. That's BetUS.com or call 1-800-MyBetUS, mention GSMC, and get 150% in bonuses on your first deposit.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, GSMC football fans, nation, and people. We're back talking about a guy who's near and dear to my heart. I don't know if Brice likes him nearly as much. He is from Atlanta, though, so maybe you like him just a tad bit. But we're talking about star running back Alvin Kamara for the New Orleans Saints. He has missed 3 straight days worth of training camp, and they have all been unexcused. And now sources are saying that it is, in fact, a contract dispute, that he is basically starting his holdout. And it makes sense. It's probably right on time for when he would be doing this now. Like holdouts at this point are kind of par for the course Everybody does a holdout when it's time for money to come in, really, except for quarterbacks. Basically, quarterbacks usually like, oh, I'm not going to hold out. We'll get the deal done.
They might hold out for a second, but not like
they won't even publicly say they're holding out most times. A quarterback.
I was gonna say Dak, but he did come to camp, so
yeah. And Dak's whole situation was so far in advance that it felt like it wasn't really a holdout anyway. Mm-hmm. So, regardless, Alvin Kamara is holding out and he's looking to get paid. And this is not the only running back doing this, of course. Dalvin Cook is in similar situations in Minnesota. And these 2017 running backs are looking to get the money that they feel that they've earned and deserved. Now, we all know Christian McCaffrey went and got a nice check earlier in the summer. And I'm certain that Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook are looking at that as a baseline for what they might be able to get. I don't think Alvin Kamara is going to get as much. But I think the Saints are about to take care of your boy. Because I think if there's any team that values what a running back can bring to their offense, I think it's Sean Payton's New Orleans Saints. If you look at how the Saints have used him in the past 3 years of having him, he's had 81 catches 3 straight years in the league. Keep in mind, he barely played his first 2 to 3 games in his rookie year. That was the year that, of course, we had Adrian Peterson and we let him go. And Alvin Kamara took over the reins with Mark Ingram and got it done. Phenomenal season. One of my favorite times to ever be a fan of this team. Year 2, Alvin Kamara just cemented himself as one of the better superstars, not just running backs, one of the better superstars in the league as far as overall talent and ability. 81 catches. Last year, even though he missed a good amount of time, we clearly could see he wasn't healthy. He had to get some surgery at a certain point at the end of the season. Still 81 catches though, and he missed some games. So his volume as not just a runner, but as a pass catcher in the backfield adds so much value to that offense. People have to already pay attention to Michael Thomas 24/7. Now you have somebody that you also have to pay attention to. It's like, which one are you going to give up the ball to at a certain point? And then, of course, coupled that with all these other weapons that the Saints have to their disposal. Now, of course, Jared Cook is not getting any younger. He's going to end up being one of the guys that you have to worry about as far as replacing, which, the Saints drafted a couple tight ends in the league, or in the draft, this last draft. And then, of course, Emmanuel Sanders is another great weapon that they've added to their roster. And we're still trying to figure out what do we have in some of our younger wide receiver talent out there as well. But the biggest question is, if we think Drew Brees is going to be really done after this season, no matter what happens, are you somebody who would rather let Kamara go and just keep going and find your quarterback for the future? Or would you rather keep Kamara and realize that no matter who your quarterback is, Kamara is going to be somebody who makes that quarterback's job 10 times easier? As we saw, Kamara wasn't the greatest as far as when Teddy Bridgewater took the helm. But it wasn't necessarily because Teddy Bridgewater was not doing his job, per se. Kamara was not 100%, and you can kind of just tell that from just watching how he used to play and how he played then. I think a healthy Kamara helps any quarterback basically look like their best version of themselves, and I think that the Saints are taking that into account. And I just think he's a really good locker room guy, and he's a culture guy that I don't think they just would let walk away.
Yeah, it's a very interesting situation. Well, the first question you got to ask, obviously your backup's Latavius Murray. Would you be comfortable having him as your starting right back next year if that was the case? And then you would have to then find another guy on top of that to either do another 2-back system, or I don't know, maybe y'all are able to hit the home run or something. But, with your quarterback situation, that also could dictate that. Obviously, y'all are paying Drew a lot of money this year. More likely than not, if, let's just say, hypothetically, all the rumors have been true, and Sean Payton really is going to go with Taysom Hill as your quarterback next year. Mm-hmm. Well, obviously, you can give Kamara the money because you're not, I don't think he's going to break the bank for Taysom Hill. I think, you know what I'm saying? Because, why you ain't going to pay a guy like that much money? and even though he's been more of a gadget player than actual position player. So that would probably more guarantee him being back and getting paid for sure. Because that's what your quarterback situation is going to determine how much money you invest into the position. So if you do go with like a rookie, obviously, rookie scale, or if y'all don't draft a guy in the first round, you'll have more money. And obviously, like I said, if you go with Taysom, you'll have more money. Or I believe Jameis signed a 1 or 2 year deal. Was it 1 or 2?
It was a 1 year.
Okay. So let's say y'all read up Jameis. I mean, I don't think literally, $20 now, $20 million is like kind of like, okay, like the quarterback market now. So that may not be a lot, but it's still less than what Drew's getting. So you may even look at that and think, okay, yeah, we have enough to get Kamara. But if y'all are going to break the bank on a quarterback, then I would think y'all would forwardly ahead of time have to let Kamara go, unless y'all are willing to also sacrifice some of your young defensive players that are also due for a contract pretty soon. So it's kind of a tight position, I guess, because you don't want to really obviously, like you say, you don't really pay running backs that big dollar like they used to. Zeke got it, but that was a special case, plus that's Jerry Jones. But, we maybe you don't see it in that situation, because obviously the one thing that could hurt Kamara is if he misses games and then Latavius Murray plays well, it's going to make the Saints look at it and say, okay, well, we can still do fine without you. Because I think the thing is that sometimes it's the need of a player. Like you could say the Carolina Panthers, they need Christian McCaffrey. If Christian McCaffrey goes on, they're finished. Finito, done. But also with the Cowboys a couple of years ago when Zeke was at his height, they really didn't have like a second guy. He was basically the bell cow. So if he went down, it's like, who's running the ball for the Cowboys that's going to give them the same effectiveness and help Dak out. So I think that will also be one of the big things that y'all have to look at too, because that is something that some teams do look at. And so I guess if y'all feel like I guess it depends on the vision of what you see of your team next year, because you're going to have a slightly different team next year. And it's just, do you think Kamara would be better fit for that? Or do you think we might need to change the entire backfield?
Oh, no. First of all, no. We don't need to change the entire backfield. Here's the deal, man. Listen, Latavius Murray is a good back in this league. He's a quality back. But he will never give you the same level of versatility that Alvin Kamara gives you every Sunday. And that was paramount even when Kamara wasn't in the games. And we understand that Latavius Murray was toting the rock, but that wasn't, a lot of things have to deal with game plan. A lot of things have to deal with scheme and what you're worried about. And I feel like Kamara just does what Latavius Murray already can do and then adds more on top of it. And it makes the two backs work better for each other. I don't think that letting Kamara go because you believe Latavius Murray can do what he does, that is a recipe for disaster. And I also don't think New Orleans would ever do something like that. First of all, New Orleans takes care of their people. I don't know about you guys, but New Orleans takes care of their guys when they understand. Well, yeah.
I mean, I could say we take care of our guys, Grady, Julio, Matt. For the most part.
I'm not too worried. We'll figure out a way. If there's anybody who are some cap magicians, it's the New Orleans Saints, and they'll figure out a way to get the deal done. And if it can't be done this year, Kamara he'll sign a franchise. He's still on his rookie deal no matter what. He's looking for an extension. And if they can't reach an extension at some point in the middle of the season, or it comes down, the season starts, and they have to look at, well, what do we do? Do we franchise tag him or what? I don't think Kamara is the first guy you think about franchise tagging. When you look at the whole plethora of who came in at that time for the Saints in that one draft, like, we understand they got Marshawn Lattimore. We understand that they got their safety as well back there, who, he's had his moments. And I think he's actually a lot better than what people think he is.
You talking about Marcus Williams?
Yeah. So, yeah, we understand Marcus Williams was a big time talking point at the end of the Vikings game. We understand he was a rookie. He learned a lot, and he's still not the greatest tackler. But what he offers the Saints in the secondary at times, he shows flashes of what he really can be at a later point. And I think he's the guy that you have to be like, we got to franchise tag him. Rather than, especially considering he's a safety. Now,
well, not Marshawn?
No.
Cause obviously y'all have y'all 2 corners right now. Cause you need some corners to guard, to guard these receivers. So wouldn't his value be a little higher in the NFC South? Cause you're not going to be asking Marcus to guard Julio. You're asking Marshawn.
That's what I'm saying. We're not going to franchise tag Marshawn Lattimore. We're going to pay him.
Okay. I got you.
No, we're going to pay Marshawn. He's the only guy in the NFC South that can stop Mike Evans because he's done it 3 straight years in a row, basically. Right? The only person that can't be guarded in the NFC South basically is Julio Jones and Michael Thomas. But we have one of those guys that can guard basically everybody else, and we don't have to guard Michael Thomas, thankfully. So that's an advantage. And I also think that, it's just too hard to come by a corner. Like Marshawn Lattimore is a top 10 corner in the league. He may not always get recognized as such. And because sometimes when the Saints play on national TV, a lot of things get misconstrued. We play a lot of different coverages. We're not always in man-to-man. So sometimes people think Marshawn's getting beat, but in reality, he's just playing his zone. But he is a guy who can go out there and cover anybody, and we'll take the challenge of doing so. Has there been times we thought about effort issues? Yes. But he typically finds a way to turn it around, and I think he's just one of those guys who's just very talented and sometimes can be hard to coach, or sometimes it's hard for him to take coaching. And that's just one of those things, a trade-off for having extreme levels of talent. And I don't think that this team in general is absence of that in the first place. So I think that Marshawn will get paid. I think the best interest for the Saints is to pay Alvin Kamara. So we'll see what happens. I'd hope to get the deal done this year rather than any other time, because when it's franchise tag or payment time, that's when things start to get dicey. Right now, everybody's good. I have a good feeling that whatever they reach on, Alvin Kamara is still going to play no matter what. If they can't reach a contract today or, whenever before the season starts, he'll still play. He practiced earlier in the season, of course. In training camp, he was practicing and then he stopped, thus probably trying to get a more involved money pool situation for his lifestyle. Keep in mind, Alvin Kamara was not drafted in the first round. Of course, he makes endorsement money, right? He's not a broke man, right, by any stretch of the means, but he makes $2 million off of annual salary. When you want to talk about some of the best value that teams ever have gotten, that's got to be top 5. Like, Alvin Kamara is literally not making money that he should be making. So when you look at it like that, I think the Saints are going to take care of him. And honestly, Marshawn, he's been living off of first round money. I don't know how much exactly, but he wasn't a top 10 pick. However, he was top 20. So that has to matter. And, Marcus Williams, we'll figure it out, So I think that's the situation down there in New Orleans for sure.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see what happens, I guess, and see if y'all can get it done.
We're not going to have a Telvin Coleman situation here. That's just all I'm ready to tell you. We're not going to pick the wrong back. That's just all I know.
Oh, brother.
Anyway, we're going to take another break here, and we're going to come back talking about some fantasy football. Yeah, I know. Brice has a draft in about 45 minutes, and it's about to get real for him. So we're going to talk about just who he's looking at to get involved in with for the next fantasy football season here at GSMC.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
right back. GSMC Football Podcast. It's going to sound like GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast for the next 15 minutes because that's what we're talking about, as it's one of the bigger portions of, football culture is people like to draft individual players to win money for them. Brice, I don't know if you're playing for money, but if you are, who are you targeting? What kind of league are you playing in? What are you doing to prepare for the next 45 minutes as we talk nothing but football? But I know on your mind, you're like, what's my draft position? What am I about? Who am I going to be able to get? Will I and can I get McCaffrey? What?
Hey, you might have a point there, but yeah. So obviously, I get my spiel real quick. So I played fantasy football for the first time last year. I played.
Wait, what?
Yeah,
this was your first time last year?
Yeah,
unreal.
Yeah. So I made a league. So we're gonna talk about my league. I won my league in the first year. Obviously, I had to talk about my story. I was in the middle of the pack. I lost my last 3 games of the fantasy season. It looked like I was going down. It looked like I just didn't have it. Everybody started to doubt me. They said, you're not good enough. You don't draft well enough. You don't sign players enough. And you know what? I was able to, make a couple of changes, make a couple of trades and some signings. And, I really got a couple of players who really kicked off at the end of the season and, was able to come back into the playoffs, beat, 2 of the top 3 seeds and, win it all. So, my resilience, is obviously on display.
This is the most athlete thing you've ever said on the podcast. I just hope you understand. You have the whole thing going and the athlete.
Oh yeah.
3 cent, like.
I could give that athlete interview easily. It's just like, it's just like, yeah. So, I came out there and competed and, I did what I had to do out there.
Sound like LeBron. That's the LeBron response.
Yeah. So, but really, yeah, so obviously this year I have another league, but I extended it to 12 teams. Last year, I think it was 10, I believe. This year, we have 12 teams, so I've added new challengers for my championship. Plus, obviously, some new people have joined from last year. And, obviously, we're going to draft. Obviously, we're just going to hope for the best. Obviously, the season plays the entire season, obviously, playoffs and everything. There are some people in my league asking for us to play for some money. But they're like trying to do it more on an individual basis. Like, who's going to finish the best out of the season? Like this one guy messaged me and said, I'll bet you 1K I'll finish better than you. I was like, I mean, if I was balling like, then, maybe we could discuss that. But, I just really do it for fun right now. I think obviously maybe a little bit later into it, I might start to maybe put money on it. Man, I might even have, if you can get a good group of people, man, you might be able to even have like awards and stuff. I don't know, rings, trophies. Reminds me of that show, The League. Obviously they had all those different awards and different consequences for last place, first place, stuff like that. But yeah, so really on my draft board, I'm really hoping to get some of the advice I got. Here's some of the advice I got for anybody who plays fantasy. I don't know, Ethan's a fantasy expert, so he might disagree with what I'm about to say. But one thing I was told is that don't draft a quarterback in the first round because you're going to probably be able to get a quarterback in the 3rd or 4th and still be just as good.
Don't draft. I'm just going to interject there. Unless you're looking to go get somebody who you have 100% faith in that they're going to be a quality top 3 quarterback, you leave those players alone until you get to a comfortable position to draft them. And by comfortable, I mean 6th round or later.
Yeah, so hey, he knows what he's talking about. But hey, and then also, I was told to draft my running backs and wide receivers early, especially running backs, because they gotta go fast. Because there's only a few top tier guys, and then you just got guys who can give you points, but it can sometimes vary week to week. Because that is one thing I did notice about my running back position last year. They kind of varied week to week. So it was kind of hard to know, okay, is this a good week for him or not? Where, Christian McCaffrey was giving you 30 points every week, It's just like you knew you were going to get you 30. Even if he had it down, it was 25. So, I mean, it's not like you had a bad week like some guys do. So obviously I'm looking maybe to probably get Christian McCaffrey. Last year, I think I took Julio my first pick. I can't remember. And I actually don't remember, but I think it was Julio my first pick.
Do you know where you were in the draft?
I was like in the top 5. I think it was in the bottom 5 of my.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I was actually lucky. I was able to take Julio and Mike Evans with the 2nd.
No, you went 2 wide receivers?
But obviously Mike Evans had that horrible start, so I got rid of him. I was just like,
Oh, you traded him away?
Yeah. Cause he just had that horrible start, but he was so up and down most of the season anyway. It was just like, I need something a little bit more consistent. But I had Calvin Ridley. I also drafted later in the rounds as my third wide receiver. So I feel like I had a pretty good receiving core. I think my running backs last year were like Leonard Fournette and Nick Chubb. I was able to get Nick Chubb.
No, that's how you survived then.
Yeah, Nick Chubb was doing well for me. Obviously Fournette was kind of Like the first week last year, let me be honest with you, man, that was disappointing. My first week last year was terrible. I had drafted Baker because I thought Baker was going to have a good year. Because obviously this is off his rookie year when he played well. And then he played against Tennessee and gave me like 10 points. And I was just like, and I had Carson Wentz and I was like, why did I not play Carson Wentz? Because I didn't know Tennessee was going to be that good. I thought Tennessee was not a great team. Oh, the new Browns and Odell, things are going to pop off. And then but I was thinking that week, I remember I was like, I don't know, should I start Carson? They're playing Washington. I mean, but it's the first week, so I don't want to just assume, Washington's going to be a cupcake and they're just going to be able to walk all over them. And then this man Carson had 30 points and I was just like, yeah. I definitely had to go through my growing pains, man.
Fantasy will test you as an individual of the sport. Sometimes you'll think, do I even know what I'm watching? Do I understand the complexities that come with watching NFL football? Sometimes you'll never know. I will say we had some shared pain because Julio at times, not the best, not the greatest that you wanted out of him. Especially if you're doing standard. Were you doing standard or PPR?
I was doing standard.
Oh yeah. Then you got some 10-point games from Julio just made you question your life. Imagine having that and Odell on the same team every week, and you had no choice but to start them because
I'm sure before obviously whenever they open up our draft room, I'm sure I'll see where I'm selecting, but I might try to get Michael Thomas because I played a guy who had Michael Thomas last year, and obviously Michael Thomas may not always score touchdowns all the time, but he's getting like 10 catches a day, and 10 catches a game. And so that's a good amount of points just off the catches alone. Then if you get the big yardage and touchdowns, then he's easily able to have one of the big fantasy days either. So obviously I might look into that as well. Do you have any advice for defense? What do you do when it comes to like picking a defense? Obviously that's later. Like I'm not driving that early, but is there a certain defense that you're just like, I'm just going to go who I think is going to be the best? Or are you just like, or is it like truly like who I think might be better than expected? Maybe try to potentially guess right on a team that maybe some people weren't thinking we're going to have a great defense this year. Like, how do you go about that?
Well, I actually just talked about this. It'll come out basically the same day this comes out. So basically when it comes to team defense, because IDPs are a different story, but team defense, in my opinion, you're kind of guessing a lot of the times. You can look at metrics. You can look at whose defense was best last year, who ended off as a good defense. Like we all understand, like right now we think Pittsburgh has a really, really good defense. Mm-hmm. There's no telling if Pittsburgh is going to be just a good defense because they don't allow people to score, or they're going to be a good defense because they create turnovers. I'd rather take a middle of the pack defense that creates turnovers than a defense that doesn't allow people to score very often but does not generate turnovers, because in fantasy turnovers are king on defenses. So if you can get a pick six, or you can get an interception, you can get a fumble, you get sacks. You need those sort of things heavily. That's what people typically try to target, and it's just too random. You never know, because it's the new season, and any metric, any numbers that you see within the first 4 games, don't bet on them being the same way for the rest of the season. Because if you look at what happened to the Patriots played a bunch of cupcakes, and their defense was being touted as the greatest we've ever seen. For the remainder of the season, they were still pretty good, but it was no longer the same thing. They were giving people like 18 plus points a game regularly for like the first month of the season. That was unheard of. You're not getting that very often. Same thing with teams like the Jets, who their defense is kind of gutted right now. But a team like, sometimes I take the New Orleans Saints, and that can be kind of questionable because the New Orleans Saints defense is up and down all the time. Like sometimes they have like, whoa, the Saints defense are top 10. And then sometimes like, oh, the Saints defense is like bottom 20.
Yeah, because I experienced that with Philadelphia last year.
Right.
There were games where they had 35 points on defense, and there's other games it's just like, what happened? But I also understood like their secondary was kind of so like if they ain't getting pressures and turnovers and they getting lit up, this is going to be a good game. for them defensively. So I feel like defense, you kind of can't really, some other fantasy advice I got is that defenses, it's really a week to week thing.
No, yeah, it's all about matchup.
Yeah, so if you see a defense this week that looks like they have a better matchup than defenses you have, definitely don't be scared to change it. Because it's going to be hard. It's not a defense you could just keep the entire year unless you just happen to just hit the gold mine with a defense and they're just great week after week.
Right. Sometimes they go on hot streaks and sometimes it's cold. Like a lot of people pick on based off of quarterback play. Like that's another strategy. Like if you see that last year's version of Jameis was going up against you, you might have just rolled the dice and say, hey, he might throw for like 2-3 touchdowns, right? That's going to knock you down pretty bad, basically to 0, right? But Jameis is going to at least give you some. He's going to give you some back. So if you're able to capitalize on something like that, you can turn a bad week into something greater. So that's another thing. Like people say, oh, it's a bad quarterback. I'm picking up this defense or stuff like that. Like that's just how some people ended up playing defenses last year. And, it's just who's playing the worst guy or stuff like that. So I rocked with the Jets defense for a good second last year in some leagues because they ended up getting some sacks.
There was some defenses like they were never like bad. Like they were always be kind of hanging around the 10.
Yeah.
They were just like hang. Like they may get 7, maybe 12. And that to me is like, oh, that's fine. Like it's not like, as long as you're not giving me 1 to negative points a week.
No, yeah. As long as you're not getting like 5s and below, you're pretty solid. So I never really stress about defense unless I need to make a major change. But it gets bad when you have a real flop of a game from a defense and you lose by like a couple of points. And you're just like, wow, if I just, if maybe I just could have seen the writing on the wall, but you never really know, man. You never know who's going to blow up and who's going to be good, especially in the early parts of the season. And that's the struggle. I always find that starting off strong in fantasy in the first few weeks will always benefit you because you never know just how things are going to pan out. But in my experience, starting out strong also means that you are probably very prone to a bad middle of the season. Like in the past few years, I've started out very strong, and it's typically due to guys who, I thought would start out strong, but then they end up, whittling down, and that could be through a plethora of things. Injury, like I've had Melvin Gordon seasons where Melvin Gordon looks amazing, and then of course injuries and starts to slow down, and you got to pick up someone like Austin Eckler who was on the radar, not on the radar as much as he was before. I had like Minnesota a couple years ago. Minnesota was crazy turnover happy, making turnovers and stuff, and then they just slowed down. And then I had Saquon, his rookie season. Saquon was phenomenal. And then he slowed down near the tail end of stuff. So it's always a give and take. And especially if you're going to start looking at rookies, like real quickly, are you going to look at any rookies to target this year?
Yeah, since I'm doing 12 teams, obviously. Last year we had 10. Obviously it was easier to maybe get, I guess, a higher quality of player because, obviously there's not as many teams. Obviously it's going to be a little bit more stretched. So I'm definitely going to look at rookies and think, is there any rookie that I think could break out this year or is in position to break out? So definitely I'm going to look at some guys who potentially could get playing time and obviously have them just in case. Cause like I was lucky because I actually drafted Hollywood Brown last year, Marquise Brown from Baltimore when he had that big week 1 game. Mm-hmm. So obviously like I was just like, you never know sometimes. So I definitely feel like guys like that I need to keep an eye on because I need to fill out that depth on my roster. And you never know, one of them could blow up and be a really big contributor this year. And now it's like, okay, all right, I got a gem. But also, I have a guy in my league who is a huge Philadelphia fan, and so he drafts every Philadelphia player.
What?
Yes, he drafts. But here's the thing: he doesn't like Carson Wentz, so he won't draft Carson Wentz.
So this guy is just selling. So if he gets the first pick, who is he taking?
Probably Zach Ertz.
No way.
He's probably going to take Zach Ertz.
There's no way he's taking Zach Ertz first pick. I know he'd probably take Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders is a top 15 fantasy player right now in the ADPs. So I hope he takes Miles Sanders if he's gonna do that. But that's sacrilegious.
He'll probably draft Jalen Hurts before he drafts Carson.
You need to tell him that this is not. First of all, why? I don't understand that. That's like some Matt Ryan stuff right there where people hate Carson Wentz is a top 10 quarterback who has top 5 ability. I would kill to have Carson Wentz right now, even though I have Drew. But the idea of what Carson can give you later on down the road and everybody else around the league, there's not that many quarterbacks that I feel have his ability and that are better than him.
Yeah, definitely.
That guy is crazy. But we're gonna go and take our final break, and we'll get and finish out the podcast talking about some college football, GSMC.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, we're finishing out the podcast here, GSMC football podcast, with a little bit of college flair, a little bit of college tang. Have you been keeping up with what's going on as far as the vibe in college? As we know, a couple of the big Power 5 conferences have opted out of doing the season in the fall. Some are looking for winter and spring. Others have kind of been idling on the whole idea that we might just not do it at all. And we keep hearing, like last week, there was a bit of a rumor that coaches were meeting in the Big Ten to potentially try and petition to get the season back started, because a lot of people are nervous for the Big Ten and the Pac-12 that, let's say if the SEC, the ACC, the AAC, and so on and so forth, whoever everybody's playing, say the season goes well, quotations, then everybody's going to look at the Big Ten and the Pac-12 and be like, well, why didn't you play? Why did you do this? You hurt people's seasons, or you got this, that, and third. And it's going to be a lot of backlash. But I also find it pretty interesting how, even though that's ideology, it doesn't seem like the momentum of COVID-19 is slowed down per se, as we just had 4 LSU players, including star wide receiver, potentially probably the best wide receiver in college football last year to some people's eyes, and definitely the best pound for pound football player as far as the receiver category is in college football. Just opted out in Jamar Chase for LSU. LSU 1 is gutted. Like, this is it. Like, LSU's rankings probably should just fall right now. Like,
I mean,
from coaching staff to, they lost 11 players via the draft. They left early. And now this is pain. If you're an LSU fan, this is legit. If I'm Ed Orgeron, if I find a way to get 8 games, hero. Because this is bad. LSU is struggling to hold on to something. We thought that, losing Dave Arnetta, losing
I think they lost Joe
Brady as well to Carolina. Losing,
I think their entire offense left. Like, all their linemen. Obviously Jamar Chase came back, but obviously we know Jefferson, Edwards-Helaire, Burrow, Thaddeus Moss.
I think Thaddeus Moss was undrafted.
Yeah, he was undrafted, but I think he's on the team right now. But yeah, so it's kind of crazy because, he kind of played a little decently. Oh, he's undrafted. But yeah, so they have a lot of replacing, but I mean, this is the mark of Orgeron trying to show he's they're at that program level of Alabama where you can just reload and still bring a very competitive product. So I guess it just really depends on that. Did you hear about the vote the Big Ten had?
No.
They had a vote. The coaches.
Oh, well, yeah. Of course. I just said, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you said they had a discussion about it, but like, obviously they had like the official vote. And they said the 3 teams that voted to continue the season where I believe Ohio State was one. Mm-hmm. Ohio State was one. I also see that Iowa was the other that said, "Hey, let's continue the season." And then I believe it was also Nebraska was the other team that reportedly only voted to go pro season, so have the season. So obviously that's 11-3, and so clearly that means that's not happening. If basically the schools and the coaches came together and said, "Yeah, we're probably not going to do this." Obviously, I don't know. Wasn't there? Oh yeah, Nebraska. The Nebraska players are taking the Big 12 to court.
They're trying to, yeah.
Yeah, they're trying to over it too. It's like, dang, they're trying everything to get on the field, huh? But yeah. So obviously, there's a lot still going on in college football at this very second in time, and you know, even through all of it, we can't forget that the college football season did start yesterday. Still, even though it wasn't FCS played, only ESPN. They're going to get a lot of time this year because the FBS lost a lot of games, and so FCS is going to get some time. And so they're going to have a chance to showcase their talents and make us invest more in FCS football. But so obviously, I guess there's football for you if you really, 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 really love the game. It was actually the worst game in the world. But yeah, so
oh man.
So, you know, obviously, because I believe, you know, a lot of the Power Fives that are still playing aren't starting until like late September. So
right. We
still got some time to go. Obviously, like you said earlier, NFL starts in about 2 weeks. Yeah, roughly 2 weeks. So actually, but
yeah, basically.
Yeah, basically. So, and football's coming. College, obviously, we'll have to see how it all looks, really. I mean, it's just there's not a definitive thing here. You just got to look at it and just kind of see, okay, do you like what you're seeing? Do you think it's going to be successful? Do we have the protocols in place? And if it all works out, then I guess go for it and see what happens. I really don't know if they're going to really try to do a spring season, because I feel like they're hoping then that, I guess, COVID won't be as bad or we'll be in a better place. But this from a college perspective, this will definitely be a very interesting year, so to say. Which is why I think also one of the reasons why Jamal Chase opted out, because he was just like remember a couple weeks ago when we did pro predictions, and I told you I don't think there's gonna be a national champion.
Yeah,
I think. I mean, I'm not saying that was like big part of his decision, but like, you know, he may think there and think, if I come back and play, we're gutted. And are we even going to actually defend our national championship? Like, are we even going to have that game or even the opportunity to get there? Because like I said, that motivation could change for a lot of those NFL drafted players, like draftable players, if there's not something to quote unquote play for, you know, because obviously, especially if you're a big time team, you're thinking national championship or nothing. And so potentially, like, if they say that's not going to happen, you might see players just like, you know what, coach, you know what, Nick, Saint Nick, I'm good. You got it. You got all these other 5 stars behind me. You got it. So that's obviously something that could potentially happen. I just think it's just when college football comes back, I mean, are you going to be very intrigued to watch the product?
I mean, of course, I have no choice. This is like asking me, was I going to watch the NBA? If the NBA came back in this bubble, of course, I was front and center to watch Zion play in the first game. So I was just saying,
got some good news today on that front, but
yeah, I saw Brandon Ingram, most improved player. Some people are confused, and I'm just like, how? Because people just forget just how good he was in the regular season when it was not bubble basketball, and bubble basketball had no effects on the season. So regardless, of course, I'd be excited for college football to return, and when it does return, because it's going to return for some, you know, conferences, it's going to feel very, very good. And
I think we're going to miss the energy of those games.
Well, I mean, yeah, of course, college game day is not going to feel the same. Of course, fans or little fans to no fans are going to be weird. I will say this though, be prepared, because once we're going to probably see a couple games go well, we're going to see things happen like around the games and all this. We're like, wow, football's back. This feels great. things are under control, and then you're going to get the think pieces and the thought pieces of what is Big Ten doing. Like, don't assume that after these first couple of games and these first few weeks that things are going well, because this is not just about, of course, how the players are playing on the field, but this is about their surroundings. If the college atmosphere gets worse, because I would be someone to believe that when you have games, especially home games, and it's a big one, people are going to tailgate. People are going to find a way to congregate to watch these games no matter what. They don't have to be in a stadium to congregate, because most people tailgate anyway. Like, they're going to tailgate before the game, they're going to tailgate during the game, and they're going to start packing up, and college students start going out to the bars and stuff later on those Saturdays. If they don't prepare for that, we're going to see some bad times. We're going to see some bad times, and it may not affect technically the players, because maybe the players, hunker down, because, it's all about what they choose to do with their lives. They're individual people, and if they really want the season to work, they have to sacrifice going out, like everybody else should have to sacrifice going out. But of course, they are the pilots of their own lives. They make their own decisions.
You don't think the coaches are going to have maybe some curfews and stuff in place? Like,
what incentive can you give them? Besides playing, like, what else can you tell them that, like, because...
Well, I always said you never know. Coaches could sit here and just be like, listen, like, if you go out, they may look at that as a violation of the rules. And like you said, playing, they may sit here and say, all right, you're not going to play in the first, you're not going to play the game if you go out.
The thing about that is that changes the narrative, that changes everything for college football. Because once you start putting stipulations and saying you no longer can do this, that, and the third that a regular student can go do, you have changed everything about what a student athlete is, because you no longer are a regular student anymore, which they keep preaching that student athletes are no different than your actual students, which is false. It's always been false. And there's been no reason to keep this, this fallacy going on for this long. But that's the fact of the matter, is they have to play it in a situation to where they don't lose this grip on college athletics, and also basically run this as a professional league like they have been trying to do for years. It's a hard balancing act to deal with when you have a pandemic that's basically forcing your hand at every whim, every single new article comes out, every single new positive test. Like a few weeks ago, we heard that Alabama as a university had 300 COVID cases. Mm-hmm. Like, that's pretty bad. And I haven't looked in to see what's the numbers now, but that was just bringing all these kids back to school. So now, what do we do in a month or so when we see that the numbers aren't decreasing, when we see that things are getting worse rather than better? And you have to look at your football team, you have to look at your unit and say, what are we going to do? Are we going to isolate these players, or are we going to realize that we can't isolate the players and keep our fallacy going up? So we're going to have to just cut bait, and we rather play the long game with this college football stuff than just trying to make extra money right now, and they just opt out of the season. So I think the NCAA is about to have to start making some big time decisions.
Yeah, probably. And it's just something that I think they know, like, hey, we got to make some changes. We got to make sure our athletes are safe. The schools that are going ahead with the seasons have to make sure the athletes are especially safe, because if things go wrong, then like you said, it could be, what's the Big Ten doing? What's the Pac-12 doing? Well, if football teams start getting big COVID cases when the season starts up, they're going to be like, wow, Big Ten, Pac-12, you're so smart. You did what a lot of people were scared to do, and now they're struggling, and you're keeping your, I guess as far as we know, players safe in terms of, I guess, from the system of football, and maybe the reasons why they may have gotten the COVID cases. But it's one of those things, I think we just have to see what happens at the end of the day and hope for the best, because players want to play, obviously. Even the conferences that postpone want to play. It's just, you got to think about what's, I guess, best for you and best for these players in your respective conference. Because at the end of the day, you got to go, even though a lot of parents are also saying they should play. But yeah, eventually you got to tell these parents, like, hey, we did what we could, and he got COVID. So.
Oh man. Hopefully not, but we're going to wrap it up here. This is the GSMC football podcast for this week, or at least for this Tuesday. There'll be more. Of course, Brice does another one soon in the incoming couple of days. But for us as a duo, that's it. Until next Monday, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. And don't forget to follow us on our social media, GSMC Football, for all your news, conversational pieces, and ask us questions, whatever you feel like. So, GSMC, we'll see you all next week.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.